Hi, my name is Soile, and you're listening to Heart to Heartland, a fan podcast from a fan perspective. Welcome back to the podcast. I feel like this is going to be a pattern this season, but I just want to make sure that no one walks into an episode and finds out that they're listening something that they shouldn't be listening because maybe you're watching from CBC TV and you actually haven't seen the episode yet. So today we're going to talk about the second episode of season 18. So if you haven't seen the episode Bird's Eye View, please step away and come back when you have. Or if you don't mind spoilers, welcome, and I hope you enjoy your stay here on Heart to Heartland. I actually received an interesting comment under the previous podcast episode. It wasn't particularly about the episode one per se. It was posted under the podcast episode, so I'm not really sure where to sort of read this, so I'm just gonna use this as a way to warm up my vocal cords. It's just one sentence, so it shouldn't take long. The comment is from Larry. So, Larry, if you're listening, this is your airtime. It says, no tie back to Heartland, no Heartland. Amy is becoming nothing like Heartland. How old is stupid love interest? In talk about marriage to Caleb or Nathan is just the end of the show. Best fans do not plan on watching Heartland anymore if these love interests that are being proposed that are showing up on Heartland to me and the rest of these fans, Heartland might as well just stop and just end. If Heartland is going to continue, Amy needs to be more of a mother than a love interest mentality, a cheap soap opera star to us, the fans. Heartland is over. If this is the case, get rid of all the love interest. It's coming to Amy and Heartland. Yes, just destroyed the show. We will go to things like Yellowstone and other shows that aren't conflicted as much. Amy should be a mother like her mother and get rid of all the stupid love interest. The writers are destroying the show. As far as this fans are concerned, Heartland is dying or is dead. Just this simple. Goodbye, Heartland. Looking forward to watching other shows if this is the case. Goodbye, Heartland. 10 exclamation marks and then 3 question marks. Sorry, I sort of got out of breath during that one, but that was a long one sentence. So I hope you're happy, Larry. You've just been heard by me, by someone who has no control over what's going on in the show, who's just happy to talk about whatever people are feeling while watching the episodes. And speaking of that, let's look into your comments about episode 2. Patricia said, Episode 2 was heartfelt with memories with Caleb and Lindy. Nathan showing Lou how to keep Stetson calm was new to me, seeing Lou being receptive to Nathan's advice. Then Lou turned the tables on Nathan about Amy. Nathan opening the door to communicate once again. Nathan shuts down after seeing Caleb and Amy. Never assume that's the way it is. When I was watching this episode, I found the scenes with Nathan and Lou really interesting. It is so nice to see these like typical ranch work kind of moments. I know this wasn't necessarily ranch work related. I mean, it is to some degree, but like it was due to the wildfires, I believe. But like Nathan driving a tractor and Lou getting her hands dirty and all that. I really enjoy those scenes, especially this year with Lou, because we've never really seen her do that. And then, of course, we have a bit of history between Nathan and Lou, as we know from last season. So it was a nice callback to that. But also, it sort of allowed her to see a softer side to him again and remember there's a person behind the business. And it also allowed Nathan to show that just because Lou is ready to fight and she can be very fierce. He doesn't have to fire back and be all nasty about it. Instead, he chose to show her a couple of pointers when it comes to riding Stetson, which I thought was really nice. And it also showed that just because Lou has history with horses, she's done different kind of riding. She's competed in the past, but she must have had her own horse that she knew very well at that point. And then later on, it's just been casual trail rides. And so it hasn't been that serious. So now that she has Stetson, she has to kind of get to know the ins and outs of this new horse and how they're able to work together. And I loved seeing that little bonding moment between her and her new horse. So yeah, my favorite scenes from this episode were definitely the ones with Lou and Nathan. And then later on, when we had that dinner scene with the family, it was really nice to see just this like very subtle way of showing that Lou is actually really exhausted, but then she also shared her approach to working with Nathan. And I don't know, I just love the whole thing surrounding Lou in this episode. I really like how this storyline or this story arc with Lou this season seems to be a mixture of her like best qualities and when it comes to doing business. Like, she knows what she wants and she goes after it and she's not gonna back down and everything, but then also having this side of ranching that sort of humbles her because she's not familiar with it, but she's ready to take it on. And I think that's a really interesting mixture of Lou's worlds colliding in this way. And I'm really looking forward to her journey this season, seeing more of it and where it will take her. Then Sharon said, a good episode, not as good as episode 1, but okay. Caleb flying? Different. Going on a date shows that he moves on too quick. His interaction with Amy to me was as friends and friends only. Like the horse story, something they haven't covered before, although the way they were able to stop Bender was definitely something Caleb and Ty would do. Nice mention of Ty to Lindy, and she will possibly ask more questions about her dad. As long as they don't make it the main story every episode, that would be overkill. Love how Lindy was looking after the chicks. Hopefully she will have more to do this season. I wish Katie would open up to Lou, but she'll probably do this with Peter, which in my opinion isn't fair on Lou. Love seeing Lou working on the ranch, and her big sister hat on with Nathan was good for him. Nathan seems to understand Lou. Amy really didn't give Nathan much a chance to say anything, but I know it will happen. I'm just being impatient. I don't think that Nathan is the one leading the business. I think his dad might still be pulling strings. Where are Nathan's hired hands? He seems to be the only one on and working the ranch. There's definitely more to Nathan's story, both personal and work-wise. Waiting for the next episode. Yeah, I really think there is more to the story, and I know that it is kind of frustrating when he's like holding back, but at the same time, that's how people are sometimes. So it's quite realistic in my opinion. I was also happy to see this type of country living storyline, I guess I could say, with Lindy, Jack, and the chicks. I flash back to that moment with Katie when she had Bubbles, and then when Jack was like, Amy, I think Lindy messed up and I think the chicks might be dead. So, but then of course in true Heartland style, there was a happy ending for that storyline. But I think it was interesting to see the twins playing that part because we know they've done that in real life, and it also allowed them to show more of Lindy's character. I am looking forward to seeing what other kinds of country living situations she will encounter this season. Hopefully there will be more stuff like this because I feel like back when Mallory was young and she had her chicks, and then with Georgie with the lamb and everything. Like, I love the simplicity of those stories. So I feel like they balance out the drama and everything else that's going on in the episodes and kind of keep it grounded. As for the horse story, I wasn't sure where it was going, so they did something different with that because it wasn't like obvious. But I have to say that for me, the horses, Icelandic horses, were underutilized. I was hoping there would be more of a story involving, maybe Loki having a problem with focusing on one of his gates or something like that, because it is a very interesting feature in the horses of that breed, and they didn't touch any of that. So I was kind of like, well, that's a bummer. And then it really made me think, like, why did it have to be Icelandic horses? It could have basically been any other horses as well. Like, I feel like it was a wasted moment, even though in some ways I did think that part of it really felt like early seasons when Caleb and Amy confronted the guy, and then Amy took the parts off from the trailer and it dropped as the guy was driving forward and all that. So in a way it did felt like old times, but it also made me kind of like, okay, well, I guess this is how you deal with things in nuts. And like, I don't know, you're playing with the law here. Like, how far are you gonna go and not get sued? Then Smoking Holster said, I like this episode and I'm no good comparing one to the other, so I'll leave it at that. The plain shores were really nice. I guess the plain seas were really nice, and I'm glad Caleb said that he's been flying for a year, which works with getting a license. At least they mentioned Lisa, but line explaining where she and Jessica are would be appreciated. Katie, not much there, but I'm glad she continued on with the class, and I wonder why she just doesn't come clean. The age thing will come up eventually, and then we'll see, I guess. Amy and Caleb. It was nice seeing them together, and I think at least on some level they've accepted good friendship over romantic one, but I guess that could change, although I hope it doesn't. I guess the stolen horses part of it was fine, but there's a point here that comes up in the next paragraph. Lindy. I like the chick story as the storyline is familiar to the twins since we saw them doing this in real life on their Instagram. They're both actually becoming more real as characters every episode, which is great. I like that Caleb and Amy talk to her about Ty's adventures with Caleb, but seriously, the Longhorn was not stolen from Jack, as Caleb implied when he located the story about the stolen Icelandic horses as well as the man being a bad man. And the whole story is really about Ty and Caleb rustling that longhorn because Ty felt bad and leaving a big, dangerous mystery for the owner, a longhorn he knew nothing about. Plenty of other stories to have related to Lindy than that one. I also find it hard to believe that now that she knows, Amy would be fine with it. And more to the point, how could Jack feel if he found out? Lou and Nathan. I like this as well. And again, as far as show canon, Nathan is not a bad guy, and he keeps being painted as one for no reason. Until we find out what actually happened with Garland, just blaming him for stealing the account is just wrong. I also think that Nathan is in this alone and hires temp help when he needs it. There's no foreman and no ranch hands, which is why he's always doing the work. I think episode 4 is where we start to learn what's going on, but it might come sooner. Tim, Logan, and Miley. Has anyone on the show not broken down or gotten stuck on the side of the road? I'm glad to see that Tim is back to being the new Tim rather than reventing to the asshole Tim from the last episode. Recommending cold starting is interesting, and I wonder if we'll see it. Amy and Nathan. The last scene where he sees Amy and Caleb arm in arm was a no-brainer and expected. But the thing that bothers me about this whole thing is that there are a lot of characters we don't know a lot about, especially Caleb. Like, what led up to his divorce for starters? And aside from knowing that Amy lost her husband a few years back, What does Nathan know about her? It also seems that the 2 times in this episode he had something to say to her that didn't happen. I know they get together at one point based on the previews, but I'd rather they not drag it on, as I'd like to know his story as well. Yeah, I was surprised to see that there was no real time jump. But at least they explained the Caleb suddenly knowing how to fly thing for the scenes where we have Caleb telling the story about the Longhorn to Lindy. I have mixed feelings. Okay, it's nice that he's telling these stories about his late best friend, but at the same time, I agree with Smoking Holsters that that story, wow, it's kind of like, I guess that's the way they justified their actions, because from what I remember, Ty bought a truck from that guy, and then the truck turned out to be a lemon, and then the guy wouldn't take it back. So Jack stepped in. He wanted to help, so he sold that guy his Longhorn, got the money back or whatever. And then Jack went to Ty and he was like, well, here's the money, or he sold the truck back. Or I don't remember that part, but I do remember that Jack willingly sold the guy his Longhorn. Like that was a business transaction that happened. And so Ty was not happy about this. He was not happy about Jack taking care of things and things not going the way he wanted. So he and Caleb came up with this plan that they would buy a similar looking Longhorn and then switch it up. So the Longhorn that Jack sold to the guy wasn't stolen, but they then stole back that Longhorn that now belonged to that guy and switched it up with another animal that wasn't the one that the guy bought. I see a lot of ethical problems with that, but the way Caleb and I guess Ty would have remembered that was just like this funny little thing that happened. Like we know the guy was like, well, an asshole. So in their mind, it justifies the means that they were willing to go in order to, quote, make things right. But then it's like, it doesn't matter if the guy is a jerk, because what they did was wrong, was illegal. And so it's like, I don't know if that's the kind of story you want to tell to your goddaughter. But then again, in Caleb's mind, it's a completely different story. Also, the thing about Ty and remembering Ty, I know a lot of fans have been wanting to see that, and I hope they are happy with these scenes. Like, now they've had them, and now they can understand that these things happen between episodes, because Amy brings up that she has shared stories about Ty and Caleb and all these things. So Amy is talking to Lindy about Ty. But then it is interesting the way that people choose to remember their loved one. Like, I understand sometimes it's complicated and you rather just remember the good things and the funny times and all that. But it is interesting the way their view of Ty is so much different from my view of Ty. I can't remember if it was Caleb or Amy, but one of them said something like, Ty was the kind of guy who always wanted to make things right. And I was like, I don't know about right. Like maybe right according to him. But a lot of the things that he did in terms of right was him wanting to be right. And that doesn't mean it's always legal or comfortable for other characters or having other people's well-being in his mind. Like, I could list so many things that he did wrong that would immediately come up when thinking about him instead of the things that he did right. But I understand you don't want to speak ill of the dead, especially when it's your friend or your late husband, but it's just like, it really shows that the view of Ty really changes from person to person and character to character. But yeah, I don't think he was a saint, and I always cringe whenever he is painted as one. Sorry for that rant, but it just had to be said. Slisterer said, "Okay, so there was quality here, but I somewhat wonder what the writers are doing. I enjoyed watching Nathan and Lou start to work together, and Lou actually showed some growth. The Tim, Logan, Miley storyline was also good, and we all knew Caleb was going to return, but why so soon? I loved hearing him talk about Ty. It was refreshing to hear the fun stories and see Ty's memory living on. He seems to have grown, which I appreciate, but I really hope we are not in for a whole season of Caleb, Amy, Nathan love triangle drama." Lindy stole the show for sure with her obsession with the chicks and her scenes with Caleb. And I have a feeling I know what will happen with Katie and the writers, but I'm here for it. The younger characters breathe life into the show, and I love seeing them shine. Yeah, I had a feeling last week about what's going to happen with Katie, and it sort of happened with this episode. I think I said something like they're going to go to a bar or something, and she's like, oh, I can't go, or something like that. And it happened here. I feel like she's gonna fake an ID or something like that. I feel like she won't come clean until a little bit later. Like, we're gonna see this kind of like awkward pretending to be 18 or older a little bit more until Jasmine finds out that she's actually not of age. The Loke and Miley story felt kind of like disjointed in this episode, and I'm trying to kind of figure out what Logan's place is in the show. I think he's for the demographic that is interested in young man's life, and young man who's coming from a rough background, and it is within the story of healing horses, healing hearts. But at this point of the story, I'm kind of not seeing where he fits in. But I know there's some stuff coming up with the cold channeling competition later on, so maybe it'll make more sense later on. Then HL Horses said, "This episode was fine. I liked the premiere better. I will say I didn't see the horse story taking the turn that it did, but I liked it. I do think it's fun that Caleb is a pilot now. I think him having all these random skills for his personality. I did like most of the Caleb and Amy scenes as friends. I think this episode shows how good they can be as just friends and reminiscing about Ty. I did really enjoy the Caleb, Amy, and Lindy scene with Caleb talking about Ty. I think it was cute and maybe a bit overdue. I'm not usually one who wants to bring up Ty, but I do think it's more realistic if they talk about him sometimes, especially with Lindy now that she's older. As Caleb was telling the Longhorn story and later the Bathtub one, I found myself laughing along with them, as at the time those scenes made me laugh, even if they were irresponsible. However, the second Caleb appeared half naked on my screen, I just had to pause the episode and groan. I think this episode established that Caleb and Amy can get up to adventures as friends, just as Ty and Caleb did. I would much prefer that over anything else. We didn't get very much Nathan and Amy, but what we did get, I still like, even though they were fighting. How did these characters still have great chemistry even when they are fighting? I like Amy knowing what she wants and standing up for it. I'm interested to see how Nathan gets back in Amy's good favor, and we know he does based on the trailer. I also enjoyed Lou doing more ranch work again. It was something we haven't seen before, and in a location we hadn't seen before. I also liked Lou and Nathan sort of bonding and coming to an understanding. I really liked their scenes and how Nathan gently helped Lou with Stetson. Lou asking what Nathan's intentions were with Amy was also great to see. Seems it may have knocked some sense in Nathan. The reference to teenage Nathan was nice to see as well, as sometimes I feel Heartland forgets things that happen in other seasons. I'm really interested to see what actually happened with Nathan and Garland, as he said what Lou thinks happened, didn't. I love seeing Tim in mentor mode, and I think it works really well with Logan. I also love seeing Miley. I really enjoyed Tim and Logan's scenes and Tim giving him advice. I'm interested to see where the cult starting thing goes, especially because Amy used to do that. Lindy was adorable in this episode with the baby chicks. I love seeing Jack and Lindy and Katie interact. Jack is so cute with Lindy. This whole storyline really reminded me of season 10 and the Katie Goldfish storyline. Also, we all guessed that somehow the age thing with Katie would come back and bite her in an alcohol bar situation. I really just wish she could tell the teacher. I was hoping she would tell Lou. The family dinner scene was good as well, but I'm always a sucker for those. Can't wait for next week's episode. I really liked the scene with Amy and Nathan as well. Like you said, they were fighting, but there were a lot of layers in that scene as well. So I was really impressed how much they were able to sort of move things along without things actually moving that much along. Like, I'm just really enjoying seeing Amy setting her boundaries, telling people what she wants and what she doesn't want, because I really fell for her in that scene when she said something like, I am in this point of my life where I don't have time to unravel mysteries, because as we think back, the journey that Amy and Ty had to go through in order to really get to know each other. It took a long time, and I can't imagine Amy being like, yep, I would do something like that again. Like, she's young, but she's also not as young, and it's just exhausting, especially because she seems to know what she wants. So she wants someone who is on her level in that way. And when Nathan was like, okay, what does that mean? Or something like that. And Amy said, you don't talk about your past. And Nathan said, I don't think it's good to live in the past or something like that. And then Amy said, but it's good to talk about it. And I think this relates to some of the other scenes we saw in the episode with Caleb, Amy, and Lindy, like them talking about Ty. And I think while I see Amy and Nathan's relationship moving forward and them becoming romantically involved and her being focused on that, it is a big thing for her to be able to trust him when she's feeling maybe emotional about a memory that concerns Ty. Like, she needs to trust that Nathan is okay with her talking about her past. I think that line was definitely aimed at Nathan, but I think it spoke about her as well. She feels that as long as Nathan is not willing to do that for himself, she feels kind of like she can't do that with him either. And yeah, I'm interested to see how the storyline will develop, because it's obviously gonna develop. But while we know that Amy and Nathan are going to be the end game, the journey is still going to be fun, I feel like. So yeah, while that scene was really brief, it'll be important in the long run when they start to lay down the foundations of their relationship. Heartland Lisa BFC said, all I can say is Caleb being back, cringy as fuck. Then she added, one more thing I want to add. People say Caleb has grown and matured. So why hasn't he matured enough to see that when sleeping on someone's couch in a house where a young girl and a teenage girl live, that walking around in your boxers really isn't acceptable? I had a physical reaction to that scene. I shook my head. I was trying to cover my view. It's not that Carrie or Caleb wouldn't be easy on the eyes. It's just that what they were trying to create with that scene, it's kind of like with Edwin last season. It's just too much. And I know some people have said somewhere else, not in this podcast, that Amy and Nathan seem forced. But for me, it's actually Amy and Caleb that seem forced. And it's kind of like, oh gosh, like I don't need to see this. I don't think this is doing it for people what you think it's doing. And then we have, Amy telling Nathan that he's so closed off and he doesn't talk about things. And then Amy saying to Caleb, like, oh, you're so open and honest, and You're just so perfect. And then we have a scene with Caleb being like, yeah, I think I'm ready to date. And like, I'm really open to dating. Like, did you hear? I'm willing and open to be dating a girl, a woman. Like, yeah, yeah, I'm open. Yes. So it's like, oh gosh, like, I don't get it. Is it supposed to be this awkward? Or are we supposed to think, oh my gosh, like, it just makes so much sense? Because it doesn't make so much sense to me, and it doesn't feel natural or like it would be realistic in that sense. Like, it just feels awkward all around. And it was the same thing with last season, like episode 6, like when Caleb was going after Amy, wanted to kiss her, and yeah, ugh, ugh. I don't want it. Please don't make me watch more of that ever again, please. Then Stephanie said, this episode was alright. The premiere was better. However, there were moments that I enjoyed, like Lindy obsessing over the onboard chicks was so cute, and how excited she was for them to hatch. I always love a Jack and Lindy moment, and this episode provided that. Some scenes with Caleb were okay. Seeing him fly was cool, not something we get to see very often. I did enjoy his talk with Lindy and Amy about all the fun stories he and Ty got up to. There were moments that made me groan, like Amy seeing him in his underwear, their awkward hug at the end, and Nathan nearby. I hated it. Yes, I understand it was a comforting thing, but it still made me cringe. I know it was meant to show how great friends they are, but it can be taken the wrong way. I love seeing Lou do more ranch work, and Nathan helping her with her horse, and their little bonding moments. I'm glad they brought up the fact they knew each other when they were teenagers. It was a nice reminder that they do have a history. I also enjoyed Lou acting as protective older sister and checking to see what Nathan's intentions are with Amy. I hope this is the push he needs to be willing to be honest and open with her. I will say, when Logan's truck broke down and him and Miley were going to not make their lunch, it totally reminded me of when Jack and Lisa were heading to a wedding and they didn't make it because of the same issue. I am glad Miley wasn't upset and was understanding that these things happen. I hope Logan can come to the grips with things and realize not everyone cares if you have money or not. I like that Tim gave him advice. I just hope Logan at least listens to him. Looking forward to next week. Yeah, I think it was a good reminder in that sense to show the point Tim was trying to make, that you don't have to pretend to be someone you're not, and you don't have to have the fanciest truck or clothes or whatever to be accepted and loved, and you should be proud of all the accomplishments that you've been able to make. And if someone doesn't see that or realize that you're a catch, so to speak, then they're not worth your time. But I think it was really nice, not only for Logan to hear that, but also for Tim to be able to provide that kind of wisdom. So in a way, it's easy for him to say, but I also think that Tim comes from humble beginnings in a way. I mean, we don't really know about him or his past, but I feel like the rodeo was probably his savior in that way, that because he was good at it, he was able to get some money, and then he had odd jobs here and there, but it allowed him to eventually buy a big river and be close to his daughters, and then, you know, the ball just kept rolling, and I think he sees a little bit of himself in Logan maybe, and that's why it's important for him to remind Logan that money isn't everything. It's very needed, but it isn't everything. Like, he knows what it's like to lose all the good things in your life because you were too focused on something else. So I think him saying that money isn't everything shows a little bit of growth, because we know how money hungry he has been over the years. So it is interesting choice to have him be the person that Logan confides to. But yeah, those were my thoughts about this episode. So let's look into episode 3. Episode 3 of season 18 is called You Can Lead a Horse to Water. The family faces the hard reality of a drought at Heartland, and the hunt is on to find the best spot to build a new well. Katie worries about her grandfather's health. I am looking forward to seeing how this will test the family, and I do hope that when they switch the well site, they cover the well, because I don't want to see anyone falling down into that well. I'm just joking. But the Katie thing, when I first read it, I was like, grandfather? Like, are they really talking about Tim, or have they made a mistake and they are talking about great grandfather? But the preview seems to suggest that she actually is worried about her grandfather, who is Tim. So, interesting. Like, what's going on with Tim? Because he seemed fine these first 2 episodes. This sounds like emotional episode, and I can't wait for tomorrow. So if you're watching from CBC Gem, that is airing tomorrow. And again, if you're watching from CBC TV, that's airing next week, and you're seeing the second episode tomorrow on Sunday. And that is it for this week. I'll talk to you again next week. Until then, keep your noses clean and your powder dry, as they say. Bye.